Peace and blessings. I'm so honored to be here with you and delighted to hear about the incredible news that Reverend Temple Hayes is joining your community in Ventura. I absolutely adore and love Reverend Temple and so incredibly grateful for this collaboration. And I live in Southern California, so I'll be coming to visit all of you soon. My talk title today is Beyond the Law of Attraction. And I want to start by sharing with you a little bit of my own journey. I walked into my first New Thought Center. It was Unity in Dallas in 1988. And I discovered a pathway, a new way of living, a new way of being that revolutionarily changed my life. And I was so incredibly excited to learn about affirmations and about what we now call the law of attraction, which is really Unity's principle: thoughts held in mind create after their kind. So I set myself on a course of changing my thinking and changing my life. And I discovered a couple of things that are really important for me to bring into this conversation because they inform why I now have a different point of view on the law of attraction. So the first decade or so I was in New Thought, I was trying so desperately to change my thinking. I began a mindfulness, a meditation practice. I began to become aware of the narrative of my life, the narrative of the way I created my life based on my thoughts. But I spent that first decade trying to change my thoughts. And just to be really transparent with you, it was very, very difficult. I had so many old beliefs and ideas about myself and the world, and as much as I tried to change my thinking, I found myself reverting back to an old way of seeing the world. The second thing that happened on my journey into this exploration of New Thought principles and the law of attraction is that at some point I did use vision boards and I used the power of manifestation. I did, after that decade or so, learn how to change my thinking. And I ended up going about manifesting everything that I believed I wanted, and it worked. I manifested everything that was on that vision board. And then I had this moment, and the moment was, now what? Okay, I just manifested everything that's on that vision board, and I really don't feel any different than I did before I manifested all those things that I thought were going to make me happy. So around 2005, I had the calling to go into ministry. This calling came through spending time in the silence and listening intently to that inner wisdom, that inner knowing. But here's what really happened. I had that calling, but I said no to it. Oh, no, not me. My life, no way. I cannot be a minister. How would I ever make a living at that? I love my life the way it is. So I kept that a secret. I kept it a secret for at least a year. And every time I was at Unity on a Sunday morning, I was on the board at that point, board president, board treasurer. I'd done a lot of leadership at Unity, and that calling just kept coming through. So at one point, I realized that it was time for me to say yes to that calling. And I shared with my friend and senior minister at the time that I had received this calling. And here's what happened for me. Once I said yes to that calling, everything in my life was called into question. Every belief I've ever had, all the structures that I had created. And ultimately what happened is I ended up losing everything. My business collapsed. All the things that I'd put on that vision board crumbled. In New Thought teachings, we call it chemicalization. And it very simply means that when we have a divine idea or we have a shift in our consciousness, we elevate to a different level of awareness. Everything that's not like it either dissolves or in some cases, like in my case, it crumbles. And I knew enough at that point. I had been in Unity and New Thought teachings for decades at that point. So I knew that it was happening for my highest and best. Doesn't mean it wasn't painful. The reason I start with sharing with you all of that as part of my own journey, my own pathway working with spiritual principles, is that there was a point at which I created what was revealed through me and as me was a different approach to manifestation, a different approach to consciously creating the life of our dreams. The other thing that I will share with you is I, at one point, said to myself, I will never. Now, have you ever said, I will never? And pretty much anytime I've said, I will never, I end up somehow doing that. So at the time I said, I will never be that person who creates the 3-step, the 6-step process. But here I am today sharing with you the process that I have created, which is also the title of my newest book, Conscious Creation: 5 Steps to Embracing the Life of Your Dreams. When people set intentions or goals, or they start using affirmations to manifest, I've noticed something. And what I've noticed is most people, or many people, start with the intention setting, the visualization, holding the thought in mind of what they want to create, but maybe haven't done some of what I call the clearing steps in order to live life in a very different way. And that is not manifesting or creating from our mind, but tapping into a much deeper awareness, our spiritual essence, our beingness. Visualization then becomes visioning. And so I've given this 5-step process an acronym, and that acronym is M.O.V.I.E, creating a new movie for your life. So I'm going to go through the 5 steps, and then I'll dive a little bit more deeply into each of these steps, starting with M, making peace with the past. O, overcoming core false beliefs. V, visioning. I, intention setting. And E, embodying the vision. So let's explore these 5 steps a little more deeply. As I said, so many times I have worked with people, and certainly it was true in my life, where we try to go into the visualization, the vision boards, the holding the picture in our mind and manifesting all the things in life that we want without maybe doing some of the deeper inner work. So if it's true that we are a projector and that we are projecting reality onto the world based on the lens at which we see life through, or based on our point of view, if we haven't done some of the deeper work of healing what has lived in our past, we carry that into every situation. Another metaphor I love to use is if we imagine that we're creating the portrait for our life, but we're using a canvas that's already been painted on, maybe we paint everything we want to create, but if we haven't gotten rid of the paint that's underneath it, maybe it's going to seep through. In other words, no amount of affirmations or working with changing our thinking is really going to bring us a life of deep fulfillment if we haven't cleared away parts of our past. So M, making peace with the past, is an important first step so that we can create a space to tap into inner wisdom. Now, I want to share with you something that has been revealed to me recently. The funny thing about writing books is I can read a book that I wrote 3 years ago, and I can say to myself, I don't think I would say it that way, even though I did 3 years ago. One of those things is forgiveness. I used to use the term forgiveness, but I realized that in our culture, in what we call race consciousness, in other words, collective consciousness, we tend to think of forgiveness through the lens of good and bad and right and wrong. You did something to hurt me, but I'm going to find a way to forgive you. Or I've done something that's really bad or wrong, but I'm going to find a way to forgive myself. So at some point I realized, rather than framing it as forgiveness, what if we looked at it as making peace with the past? In other words, can we shift our consciousness from the paradigm of good and bad and right and wrong and begin to become curious about what gets created when I'm in that deeply entrenched point of view of good and bad and right and wrong, and what would happen if we could make peace with our past regardless of the situation. In other words, rather than saying this was bad or wrong and it happened and I'm going to find a way to forgive myself or forgive someone else, we could realize that true forgiveness or making peace is actually a shift in consciousness. To recognize that, yes, these events happened in my life, but it's not who and what I am. And that really leads us into the second step, which is O, overcoming core false beliefs. Because of the events of our past, maybe we're carrying around core decisions that we made about our life. Core false beliefs is the way I frame them. I call them core false beliefs because they are lies of limitation and lack that many of us have buried deeply in our subconscious. And the truth is, in my experience, we're either consciously creating or we're unconsciously creating. And so that's where I did that work for a decade, and I tried so hard to manifest everything that was on the vision board and then ultimately did. But I hadn't done some of the deeper work of healing the past and looking at the core false beliefs that I've been carrying. And so those of us who have been in New Thought teaching for any time probably are aware that it's not really only thoughts that create reality. It is more the frequency or the vibration we are holding. And so early in my life, I made some really core decisions. I'm not smart enough. I'm not good enough. I'm not lovable. And these were buried so deeply in the unconscious that I wasn't aware they were informing every decision I was making, every relationship I was choosing. So we're shifting from this idea of the law of attraction to the law of radiance. I'm literally radiating a frequency. And yes, it's magnetic to situations in any direction, but also I can only choose to manifest or step into the life that I believe I deserve. So it's really less about manifestation and more about clearing away those core false beliefs, that vibration, that frequency I'm literally vibrating as, and start to heal that so that I can unplug from what needs to happen in the world and recognize that as the vibration changes, our life changes. We're going to get more into that when we get to the final step, E, embodying the vision. But for now, what I want to say is we don't really change our thinking only on the conscious level. Carl Jung says it this way: until we make the unconscious conscious, it will direct our life and we will call it fate. So we're always choosing consciously or unconsciously. Making peace with the past and overcoming core false beliefs allow us to look at what's been buried for many of us, not even aware that it's there in the unconscious. Bring that into conscious awareness, start to heal some of that. And that brings us to the next step, which is V, visioning. So there's a fundamental difference between visualization and visioning. Visualization is the vision board. It's looking at what I want to create and how do I change my thinking or my vibration or my frequency so that I can manifest what I believe I want to create in my life. That's a great practice, and it's often centered in the mind. I think I want this. I think I want that. Visioning is something altogether different. As we've done those clearing steps, we create a space where we can dedicate ourselves to spending time in the silence, listening very patiently and intently for what we once called the still small voice, which is neither still nor small, as we practice becoming aware of it, cultivating a relationship with our true nature. You see, visioning comes from our spiritual essence, not from our mind, and not even from our emotions. A lot of times we talk about frequency in terms of frequency in a heart space or a feeling. What I'm really talking about here is tapping into that and having the great remembering of our original perfection. It's Unity's first principle. There is one power and one presence active in my life and in the universe. And that we're each perfect expressions or emanations of this power. As I return to that awareness, I don't raise my vibration, I tune into my true nature. As I tune into my true nature, I can become informed by my spiritual essence rather than the programming in my mind. Another way to say it is, regardless of how much work I do on changing my thinking, it's always limited in some way based on a story or a narrative. When I recognize that I can tap into my true essence, my beingness, and listen rather than think, I receive messages that are not only for me more expansive than anything I could create in my mind, they also serve the world in a very profound way. I always like to give credit where credit is due, and my good friend Reverend Michael Beckwith created the visioning process, or his version of the visioning process, in his book Life Visioning, and that's the template I use in my own personal practice and in my book Conscious Creation, because it's very profound. We listen, we ask questions, we become aware of what that inner wisdom wants to reveal. In my own life, 100% of the time I've listened to vision, it always is not only greater than anything I could have imagined, not only are more people served, but I also have everything within me to fulfill that vision. I have enough time, I have enough money, I have enough energy. When I'm trying to create from my mind, sometimes I feel depleted, or why isn't this working the way I think it should, right? We start shooting on ourselves. As we receive messages in this step of visioning, we then give this vision legs, right? Feet and legs. We move into the action step, which is intention setting. I'm not going to go deeply into the intention setting process, but what I will share with you is that my good friend Gregory Spencer offered me a very, very practical way to bring the vision to life. It involves having an accountability partner, creating intentions based on what we received in our visioning process that are realistic, but a stretch, specific and measurable. And then we have weekly action items and an accountability partner so that we can continue to trust the vision, but also give the vision feet. Because if you're anything like me, and you might not be, there have been many times I received a vision and then I just kind of hung out in that vision, which is an important part of the visioning process, right? To hold that, to be with that, to feel the vibration. But I didn't always move into the action. This offers a way to do that. And I will tell you that this has changed my life profoundly, because there's something about being consistent with the action that comes from vision, from this pure spiritual place that allows a vision to manifest in the physical world. And then finally, E, embodying the vision. A lot of us have heard about this, and of course, the law of attraction focuses on this, right? Be the vibration of that which you want to attract. But what I'll say is there's something a little deeper here as well, in my experience and in my conscious creation process, and that is embodying the original perfection that we are. We've done that in the visioning process, and now it's our opportunity to hold that frequency. We shift from the law of attraction to the law of radiance, radiating love, radiating peace, radiating joy. This is where we move into a different level of awareness that does not involve trying to manifest anything in the outer realm so that we can be happy. It's recognizing that happiness is already our true nature. Joy is our true state. Allowing ourselves, as we go through the steps, making peace with the past, overcoming core false beliefs, spending dedicated time in the silence, visioning, having patience for that vision to become a reality internally for us, using the intention setting step to have the action. And ultimately, E is resting in that knowing. Notice it if there's any thoughts of limitation. Thank you for sharing. But I know this is true. I know this is who and what I am. And I know that this is true for you, that you are an infinite being. There's infinite potentiality within you. And as we uncover all those barriers we've put in the way of that, we recognize that life can be profoundly simple. So who have you come here to be? What is that vibration? How do we dedicate ourselves to time tuning into that frequency and then radiating that frequency? So in closing, what I want to say is thank you. I'm so honored to share with you today. And I'm so honored to share this life-changing practice, this conscious creation process, to allow ourselves to not only look at what we want to attract in the world, but who we have come here to be. Who are you here to radiate? What are you here to radiate? What is the truth of you? We find our divine purpose that is really different than a role that we play in the world. It's our beingness. So incredibly grateful. I look forward to reconnecting with your community soon. Peace and blessings. Much love.